The British were coming, hundreds upon hundreds of them. The colonial militia had been warned, but even with advance notice, the odds were not in their favor. Greatly outnumbered, the first clash was brief and brutal. 8 militiamen were killed, and 9 more were wounded. Hours later, the British marched on. They trudged slowly through the countryside on their return route to Boston, unaware that danger surrounded them on all sides, waiting patiently to strike. What happened next shocked them. British soldiers abandoned weapons and supplies, fleeing in panic just to save their lives. How did a loosely organized militia overpower one of the most powerful armies in the world? Find out in this episode, what is guerrilla warfare? After killing the first men at Lexington, British forces continued on to nearby Concord in search of hidden weapons. But by the time they arrived, most of the stockpile had already been moved. Finding only a small remainder, the British set it on fire. The blaze quickly spread beyond what they had intended. From surrounding towns, militia saw the smoke and believed the entire settlement was under attack. These fighters were known by another name, a well-earned one. They were called Minutemen. They earned that name because they could be armed, organized, and ready for combat in less than 60 seconds. As the British began their 18-mile march back to Boston, thousands of Minutemen were already mobilizing. Some merely followed the Redcoats at first, but the situation escalated rapidly. Militiamen crawled along the ground, hid behind trees, sheds, and stone walls, and opened fire from every direction. British ranks dissolved into chaos. The soldiers fled through monotony and onward to Cambridge under constant attack. By the end of the day, nearly 250 Redcoats were dead. Even more would have been killed if the militiamen were better trained. But despite poor marksmanship and limited experience, their tactics proved devastating. So how was this possible? How did colonial farmers and civilians stand up to a global military power and win? The answer lies in guerrilla warfare. The British expected a traditional battle. 2 organized armies, clean lines, face-to-face combat, fought like gentlemen. Had the Americans fought that way, they would have been completely destroyed. What the British never anticipated was an enemy that refused to stand still. Fighters who slid across the ground, vanished behind cover, and struck without warning. Guerrilla warfare is anything but traditional. It is typically waged by small, highly mobile groups fighting a much larger, conventional force. The goal of most guerrilla movements is to resist perceived injustice, real or imagined, imposed by a ruling power or occupying force. Because of their unpredictability and effectiveness, guerrilla fighters are often despised by military leaders and labeled with terms like terrorists, barbarians, or savages. Unfortunately, Americans would later turn these tactics against one another. As tensions grew, the nation descended into civil war. In the South especially, a shadow conflict emerged marked by ambushes, raids, and brutal surprise attacks. Guerrilla fighters fell into 2 main categories. Bushwhackers were civilians who hid among trees and foliage, striking suddenly before disappearing. Partisan rangers, on the other hand, were independent fighters who reported directly to Confederate leadership. Guerrilla warfare would continue to challenge America well into the modern era. One of the most notable examples was the Vietnam War. The Viet Cong were instructed to avoid direct confrontation with American forces unless they held a clear numerical advantage. Instead, they relied on hit-and-run attacks, carefully planned ambush, and vast underground tunnel networks. In some areas, these tunnels stretched nearly 200 miles. Hidden trapdoors allowed fighters to strike and vanish without a trace. American forces often never saw them coming. Even today, guerrilla warfare remains a serious challenge. Groups like the Taliban have refined ambush tactics, striking suddenly and then blending seamlessly into the civilian population. Guerrilla warfare can be extraordinarily effective. Those who wait patiently, hide carefully, ambush unexpectedly, and strike from shadows or from beneath the ground often gain the upper hand. As guerrilla fighters have proven time and again, victory in war is not determined by numbers or technology alone. Sometimes the right strategy makes all the difference.